Golf Business Live. Here's Jay Karen and Don Ray.
With that, welcome to another edition of Golf Business Live Friday edition. Speaking of intros, let me introduce everybody to Don Ray, owner of Augusta Ranch Golf Club in Mesa, Arizona, and PGA member, NGCOA Board member, as well as former board member of the PGA of America. And I'm Jay Karen, CEO of the National Golf Course Owners Association. Appreciate you guys joining us each week. The attendance seems to be staying pretty strong, Don. We must be doing something right to be attracting hundreds of folks or more each week.
Yeah, and I'm getting a lot of feedback after we're off. I think everybody likes the candor of it, kind of hearing what's going on the front lines. I mean, obviously, I got a lot to talk about in this last week at Augusta Ranch and just being an owner and a member of the PGA. But yeah, I think it's good. It's different than what's out there right now. A lot of it is so academic, and we've got that side, but we've also got this, kind of hands-on, boots on the ground kind of perspective.
All right. Well, I don't want to waste everybody's time today. Certainly, we usually limit this to about 45 minutes. And what we do is a bit of a check-in for the week and talk about, what's coming down the road as well. So I'll just kind of start off, Don, by mentioning what's happened in the NGCOA world this past week. And then I'll ask you, hey, what's happened at Augusta Ranch this week? But so for us at NGCOA, we published or produced a webinar, a live one on Wednesday with Holly Wade from the National Federation of Independent Businesses and covered what was the second wave of legislation coming out of Washington that kind of really got overlooked pretty quickly when we went right to the CARES Act. And it was the Families First Act that covers sick leave and the expansion of the Family Medical Leave Act and what is allowed for employees to take off based on COVID-related issues and what tax credits are available to employers that have to come out of pocket to essentially keep people on the payroll when they're in this sick leave situation. And so that was great. If you didn't see that, we have it posted now for people to watch, anybody member or not, at the COVID website on ngcoa.org. So be sure to look for that. Again, any of these webinars that we do, these Golf Business Live webinars, even these Friday editions, are available for watching after today as well. So a couple of things. We heard that the golf industry in Wisconsin is open again for play. So that was good news for the course owners, operators in Wisconsin. And we also heard that the payroll protection program money has run out. And so, that is an interesting issue. I mean, I would imagine they would have anticipated that it would run out. Otherwise, I don't know how the people in Washington come up with their estimates and how much money is needed to fund that. But, the phase 4 legislation is getting focused on trying to keep that funded. A combination of difficulty in applying for the payroll protection plan. Now it's shutting down as far as the access to it or the funding of it. But at the same time, today was the first time I started hearing from golf course operators that they're actually starting to see the money. So hopefully, have you seen some of that, Don? And do you know anybody that's received money from that quite yet?
Yeah, actually a good friend of mine, Tony Martinez, who runs 3 facilities, and he had gone through a bank, not a local bank or a regional bank, a fairly big bank. And yeah, got approved and the money has actually got to him. So that's very encouraging, especially when you hear about the EIDL possibly, topping out at 15,000 and obviously, like you said, with the Payroll Protection Act, where some said, hey, go ahead and wait. They're going to fully fund this for a long time. Don't worry about it. Worry about those 8 weeks that start the day you get the money. And now it turns out, yeah, you might want to get in there early. So, I think contrary to what other people are saying, anytime you can get into this first come, first serve type of situation, then get in there so you get first served.
Yeah. So we're getting some folks chiming into the Q&A module saying that they've gotten their first checks, which is fantastic. So a reminder to everybody to use the Q&A feature that we have NGCOA staff monitoring that, and folks will answer questions that are more technical in nature and kind of move those out of the queue. And then Don and I will try to sift through the ones that are still in the queue for us to answer. So we'll get to those. And anything we don't get to, we'll have the NGCOA staff post the question and answer in the new FAQ section of the COVID page. We have a new section that is kind of a catch-all for all kinds of FAQs that have been asked about everything going on. So we've categorized them so you can kind of search by whether it's a loan question, a safety question, or what have you. So check that out at our website.
Jay, let me jump in. Jay,
go ahead.
Let me jump in just for a second because it's kind of relevant. It's something I learned on Wednesday with Holly was the payroll tax credit. What I like about that is you actually short pay your payroll taxes. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you short pay your payroll taxes in order to cover some of that paid sick leave or the Emergency Family Medical Leave Act. So, for instance, here at Augusta Ranch, had 2 employees that were gone for a self-quarantine. The doctors recommended it. Okay, fine. We had put it on there as vacation. Well, bad move. You know, that needs to be under the COVID paid sick time leave. And now I can short pay my payroll taxes and get that money back immediately. So I would look into that. I'm no lawyer. I'm no expert. I've just watched a boatload of seminars, but that could be some quick funds to you right now. If you do have some of that paid sick leave, Emergency Family Medical Leave Act, those 5 categories that you kind of have to, one of the 5 you have to abide by, that you do that because that's instant money, right?
Yeah. Okay, and let's make sure we split a hair on that one. And again, Ronnie Miles is watching, and he's our guy on the case to answer some of these questions. But I think let's make sure that payroll tax credit only comes into effect after the allowable sick leave is exhausted. Then the COVID sick leave kicks in. Let's make sure that you see what I'm saying? Like if an employee had 2 weeks of sick leave, and now they're taking sick leave because of a COVID issue, let's make sure though that you get the tax credit only on the extra time that is legislated, okay, beyond the paid sick leave that they are taking as part of your policy, as your normal policy.
Yeah, okay. There are 5 kind of categories. Ronnie could probably jump in at some point, Jay, but yeah, it has to relate to one of those 5 new categories that they created, which was basically, you know, maybe your kid, the daycare's closed, so you have to be there for that. Maybe you've been diagnosed. I mean, it can't fall into regular sick pay. It's got to be COVID sick pay related. But yeah, Ronnie, please jump in. Ronnie's the expert. He'll put it on the Q&A line.
Okay. So another thing before I ask about what's going on in Mesa is, you know, we saw the PGA of America launch their Gulf Emergency Relief Fund, which is pretty fantastic. They're front loading it with $5 million through cost cutting at the operation. I know that includes like some of the executives taking or you know, not taking some of the pay and all of that, but it's getting funded through cost cutting. And then there'll be an additional $5 million that could get into the coffers, $2.5 million from PGA, and then matching $2.5 million. So I believe the application window may have ended today for that first wave of funding. And I know their system got overwhelmed with requests, as anybody has. But you know, I know you wear both NGCOA and PGA hats. So you know, have you seen anything? You want to comment on that? But it's available. Let me remind folks. There's a list of qualifications to apply for it, and it has to do with membership in some of these national associations, GCSA members, PGA members, NGCOA members, staff at you know, local golf associations, and so forth. So there's a kind of a prescribed list of those that qualify, but it's pretty broad berth, as we could see, because they got overwhelmed in the first round here. So any thoughts on that, Don?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly had a lot of members call me, you know, because they were stuck in that queue for a couple hours. I mean, I did welcome email that the PGA did send out saying that, listen, when you started the process, you were basically time-stamped at that time. It wasn't when you completed the process. So if you started to panic, you know, because your little circle was spinning on the screen, when you started the process is when you got into the queue for the first come, first serve. So you're right, Jay, an hour ago, basically they shut that down of phase 1. I mean, there's so many associations it was serving. So there's no surprise there. I don't know if there was a server in the world that was going to be able to take all of the people that were applying for that money, from the superintendents of the golf course, the PGA members, the LPGA members, the caddies. I mean, everybody, right? I mean, it was such an amazing fun the PGA's put together. So I'm sure there's some haters out there who are like, yeah, the site crashed. Easy. If you got into the queue, even though it took time maybe to get that final email of completion, when you got in there, you were okay. So certainly can call that number that E4E was offering. You can go to that website. But yeah, you know, I think it was still a positive on a positive. Some were saying, hey, the site crashed. Well, not necessarily. It puts you in the queue. So no panic there. But once again, when stuff comes available, first come, first serve.
Yeah. I will talk to us a little bit about your internet. For me right now, your internet connection is a little fuzzy, but I can hear you perfectly. But tell us a little bit about what was a week like in Mesa at the golf course? What evolution have you seen with the play and the operations?
Yeah. So, I mean, for me, we had a rate drop on Monday. It was just typically a shoulder season. Soon after Easter, we typically drop our rate. I've been in close contact with Mike Laust a lot and Sagacity Golf. Just to, what are we going to do? Because we actively do use their system projecting what my rate should be on historical data, and so certainly this is unprecedented. So it's hard to know what to do. But after long talks, we never did drop our rates. We let the shoulder rate settle in on Monday, and I will tell you, I think one of the biggest lost revenue opportunities that are going to happen out of all of this is to dramatically drop your rates in a hope to get more to play your golf course once this is over, Jay. Not right now, but even if you do happen to be one of those 48% of the golf courses that are open, I don't think dropping rates is the key now. I mean, if anything, to ensure social distancing, you don't want to pack your tee sheets. I'd be using the rate a little bit. No one wants to gouge anybody, and I'm not saying this on behalf of the NGCOA. Else. This is Don Ray, who's at Augusta in Mesa, Arizona. This is what I've seen. And so, I would just do that. As far as the week, as far as April, maybe the last 30 days is when I've really been affected. We certainly are down. The March was a huge hit, well over 100K. We're behind. Since April has started, we're down about 8% when it comes to revenue. But I will tell you, annual passes or summer passes that we're selling now, I think subscription model stuff and passes people are wanting to engage with right now. We are, about 14,000 behind last April at this time, month to date. But because of our pass sales, we've gained an extra 14,000. We are 280% higher on pass sales. So everybody kind of get into the subscription model there, even when you reopen and really look at your passes. As far as that, the well pump electrical box blew up, started a fire. So our well pump's been down for 4 days, kind of dealing with that. It's getting warmer here. So, it's typical life of a PGA Pro, NGCOA owner. There's always something going on. I have, just to have fun, Jay, I have something I want to feature. This isn't QVC, but this is what I'm calling my social distancing stick. It is high grade PVC that I chopped off at 6 foot. And so I walk around my facility with my social distancing Don 6 foot stick, just to, not make light of it, but actually make a point that 6 foot, 6 foot, it might be more than you think. And so, I've poked a couple people in the belly with it just to say, hey, we're very privileged to be open right now. We need to be sensitive to that. Certainly the mental health of the people playing Augusta Ranch, as we talked about last week, is enhanced right now. That's what golf is good for. So the stick was exciting. Other than that, I thought, that master special where Nance and Woods were talking, I had a lot of customers talk to me about that, of how it was kind of a lot. It was just really cool to hear Tiger talking about that. I hope the PGA is going to do something like that with Brooks when the PGA Championship regular date comes here in a month. So, hopefully the PGA does something like that, because really enjoyed that. Wisconsin's good news. We talked about the rates. Other than that, I've had to put a little PGR, plant growth regulator, on my hair because I can't get any haircuts out here. So I got to tone down the growth somehow. But
we don't need to get into that topic.
Yeah, I know you don't need any of that. You've scalped time ago, but yeah, I mean, between everything that's going on, and once again trying to educate myself on what's going on with the Payroll Protection Act and the money that's now dried up, the payroll.
So there's some questions. Let me get to some of the questions in the Q&A, and then I want to talk about some of the things that I read this week. So
okay.
One owner in Wisconsin is asking, Wisconsin shelter at home prohibits renting golf cars. I haven't seen that, but how can we, golf course owners, comply with it while balancing ADA compliance? We have golfers with disability already upset at us.
Right,
wow.
Right. That sounds like a governor's problem. I don't, as a golf course owner operator, all you can say is, hey, here are the regulations that Wisconsin put down, that my golf shop's got to be closed and that my driving range is going to be closed and I can't give out carts. And so for the ADA compliance stuff, maybe that's just, sending a message to the governor or your local mayor to find out how they want to handle that. Obviously, that's going to be a sensitive topic, because if you're going to be open, you need to be open for everybody, right? I mean, we're all about diversity and inclusion. So good question. Don't have the answer to that, but I know where you can go to get it. And that's right to your legislators, building those relationships so that they fully understand that you're caring about the people who want to play golf that maybe have some, physical limitations. So we're a great way to show that golf is always thinking about that.
Yeah, no, that's a really tough one, because if you follow one, then you're in violation of the other, and so this kind of a no-win situation. I mean, I always think in these sticky wickets, you err on the side of most reasonable, right? Like, for example, if and now I'm not giving this advice out, but if the Wisconsin governor says you're not allowed to provide a golf car because of the stay at home, but someone who cannot play golf without a golf car, if you have demonstrated and literally have recorded, the sanitation efforts that you made for this person who has a legitimate disability, and you've provided them with the facility of a golf cart to do this, I think that's the most reasonable thing, and a judge isn't going to hold something against you for trying to play that middle ground on something like this. So but that's a tough one. I wish we had a clear answer on that one. But let's get to a couple other questions here. So, what are you going to do with the payroll protection plan or program if your course is not open yet? Are you going to pay all your employees a portion of them? Not sure what we should do. So first of all, if you're able to get the loan, that it's not going to be forgivable, or at least it'll be less forgivable if you don't use it on payroll. You have to use at least 75% of it on payroll in order for it to be forgivable. And the less you use on payroll, the less that's forgiven. And so in this case, are you going to pay all your employees a portion of them, or do you use, I guess as the owner, you decide how to use that funding, right? There's no prescription on how to use it, right?
No, unless you want it forgivable, right? I know that it starts because of the seminar on Wednesday, that the time starts ticking when the money is deposited, those 8 weeks begin at that point. But you're right, Jay, I think, but I will, the very nature of what we're doing in NGCOA on Wednesday, and Holly answering those questions, or Ronnie answering those questions live. I know I asked specific questions on Wednesday and got an answer immediately. So that's a good question to ask. And I know Ronnie's had that question before. He's probably already typing the answer, or certainly it'll be on the NGCOA website. But certainly that 75%, if you want to get it forgivable, you better hit that number and figure out a way to do so. Believe me, we're trying to get creative here, because we will be completely out of season if I do get approved. I'm still out there. I didn't get the check yet. I went through Chase Bank and it hasn't happened. But once I get it, what am I going to do when I'm in the middle of summer and I was going to close down my restaurant 2 or 3 days anyways? So go on Wednesday. It's a live webinar, and you can ask your question and Holly answers them right then, or Ronnie. It's awesome.
Yeah. Another question coming in saying, regarding dropping in rates, don't we expect a surge in demand? And so dropping rates is not advisable question. Obviously we've talked about this, Don. NGCOA is not going to come out and say, hey, everybody, make sure you raise your rates when, the courses are open. No, but certainly there's an educational opportunity here, and that, what we've seen in the industry forever, and that we're getting more in tune to, is that pricing goes along with demand-based pricing, all of that, the yield management, every lesson is about, you can charge more when demand is higher. Now, we've always, so you can't use any situation to price gouge, because of hardship this is not like that. This is not like, there's a rush to the gas station because of some national emergency, and so everybody raises the price of gas. You're not allowed to price gas. This is not quite like that. This is a pent-up demand that's not because of shortage in supply, right? So very different situation. But I think the point is a good one, that as golf course operators, especially the ones that are closed, that when they're looking to reopen, sometimes the sentiment is to lower your prices when times are tough, and that's certainly a worthy sentiment to have out there right now in America. But if you look closely at the situation right now, if there are tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people that are pent up wanting to play golf, and they're all going to start knocking on your door when business is open again, is it advisable to discount that golf, or charge what you would normally charge, or charge a strong price? I'll leave it up to the golf course owners to decide that. I can't tell you what you should do, but I think the message is pretty clear that you should closely look at the demand that may be coming and price accordingly.
Yeah, don't get in trouble, Jay. I mean, there's no reason for that. And that's why sometimes people look for their member organizations to answer some of these questions, but you can't. We've got to stay away from some of those big words that we don't want to mention. But I will say, of course, there might be a feeling of, hey, let's do a grand opening special. We're happy to welcome you back. Let's do that. just look at your demand and look at what you normally were doing maybe a year ago. I think there will be pent-up demand. We're certainly seeing it here. We might be down a little bit in rounds, but the backfill has happened from the locals because the winter visitors have left. So, some of these numbers, I don't see them dropping lower as we typically would roll back into a summer rate schedule. So this is where you should be grasping revenue management. Every hour of your seat should be like a flight taking off for Southwest Airlines. Every hour has its own demand. Heck, every time has its own demand. But this is where you got to get up into the new century and say to yourself, if you start to see increased utilization, then rates should go up for those economic rules that have always applied in an open market, free market system like the United States. So certainly take advantage. The software companies have come a long ways on this, and you got to take advantage of that. You're silly not to, but don't panic. Nobody should be panicking now. The last, what we're going to talk about, you're going to talk about John Last's research he's done already. It says that people are going to pay to spend time with their families now because they want to do something. And so once these kind of stay-at-home measures start to release a little bit in these different tiers, there's no sense creating demand by lowering your price. It's not going to happen.
We have an operator in Pennsylvania named Steve Grable, happens to be our president, is asking the question, did you change your cart rate with only having one rider per cart?
Yeah, we could talk about that. I did not do that. I mean, that would seem like, the $300 payment I made on my room at the Super 8 when I went to see the Masters, right? Now, why Super 8 was $300 when I went to see the Masters in 2006? They gouged me, Jay. I don't care what you're saying. I know it, that was the price on the back of the door, but they certainly were charging that back of the door price in the hotel room I was in. So, I think if you quickly, Steve, changed your cart fee policies in order to, say, hey, this is the way, we're going to make some money on that. Once again, I kind of go back to our first episode, right, Jay? What's your why behind it? Now, there certainly is a demand issue with how many carts are out there. You only have so many. And, even the outside service shifts I've been working here just to cover some of these shifts, right? It's crazy because now instead of 2 carts coming in every 7 or 8 minutes, there's 4. So there is increased labor. There's increased everything. You're washing carts more often. So, Steve, I would answer that question is I wouldn't change it now, but in the new normal, if it becomes that way, might have to go back to the old days when a cart was $20, regardless of how many people were riding in it. We all went to per person cart fees at some point, but it didn't used to be that way. It used to be a cart was a cart is a cart, and you got a buddy so you could split the rate. That might not be true anymore. So I think you look at it for your next season, but this season might look a little opportunistic, and I would stay away from that.
Yeah, I agree with that. We have Nancy Schultz, who's with the Oaks Golf Course in Covington, Georgia. She's asking, how are you handling driving range customers? Do you have someone patrolling the range to ensure they are 6 feet apart? What about sanitizing range balls and bag stands?
I have my stick, Jay. I don't, Joe, I have fun with this stick, but we certainly have made the range farther apart. The boards are farther apart than they ever have been. Instead of 4 steps, it's 7, right? We wash the balls. Remember, COVID is not a hard disease to get rid of. Simple soap and water gets rid of it. So we certainly make sure there's soap in the ball washer. We do take the buckets, and I just got the simple sanitizing solution that's in your triple sink in the restaurant. And we fill it up in a 5-gallon bucket, and I dump every basket when it comes off of the range. So every basket has sanitizer solution in it. And then the balls have been washed every night, and the spacing is higher on the range. So I really feel if somebody else has some better practices than that, a lot of those are just from the stay-in-place stuff the NGCOA has already put out. But I think you're safe with that. I can understand why Wisconsin said keep the range closed. But I think if somebody went to even to that governor and said, this is an opportunity also for people to enjoy the range, and we've ensured social distancing by 10 feet instead of even 6, I think would be okay. But I think everybody should get their 6-foot social distancing stick, go cut it out of some PVC back in the agronomy department, and just have fun with it, because it makes a point also that we are taking this seriously, and it's a privilege to be open.
Walk softly and carry a big stick, right?
Yes, I'm telling you.
Yeah. All right, so there's a question about player development, and I'm going to use a segue into that question because our friends at Pellucid produced their April publication this week, and Stuart Lindsay, wrote about there's kind of a golden opportunity moment out of all of this, that there are a lot of people that are interested in the game of golf, maybe a renewed interest or a brand new interest, And, is it time to take a look at what our message is? And do we shift our message as to why people play golf? Or do we change our emphasis? If we were to say, golf as a monolith, we should be advertising golf. Because as we know, we rarely agree around the industry on how we should advertise golf and what comes first and so forth. Is it the green grass, or is it the camaraderie, or is it, what is it that, we market out there to the beginner? And does that change now? Because I think player development could see a nice boon as a result of some of this. So what do you think, Don?
Well, Project Play is awesome, right? I mean, former president of the PGA of America, Gary Shaw's involved in that too. And I think if you go to that website and see what they're doing, it's amazing. Kind of go back to my story on our first episode when that family came in and said, well, so where are the golf clubs? They'd been to Top Golf. They just fully expected for me to provide those clubs. So I think that is happening. And hopefully, basically golf invented social distancing, right? I mean, we call our pace of play, we call it our pace and space now. Our ambassadors who are driving around are monitoring space and pace. But I certainly think this is perfect for families. Project Play is way ahead of their time. We should follow models like that.
Project Golf.
There will become a time.
Project Golf.
It's Project. Yeah, you're right. Project Play, something else. Sorry. Thanks for correcting me, Jay. But Project Golf, yeah, sure. Awesome. I would go to that website. Stuart is exactly right. It looks like a program that is, if we want to figure out a way to transition these Top Golf people to being real golf, out here on the golf course, then why not take some of that and have some clubs? We all have lost and found clubs. Maybe those are clubs that are free to borrow. We got to sanitize them right now. Maybe forever we have to sanitize those clubs after every use. That's okay. But just have them available to say, hey, would you like a bucket? Do you need a club? You might be surprised if we sent that out there. People, they're nervous to even come to a golf course. Never been to one. It's like me walking into Ulta. I'm all freaked out. I don't want to buy my wife anything at Ulta because as soon as I get in there, I'm intimidated. People feel that way about golf courses. So let's lower that intimidation and say, no, we have balls, we have clubs, we have social distancing, we have a guaranteed good time for your family. So get out of the house and enjoy some sunshine.
I like that. I like the pace and space. That's a really, I like that phrase, because that may be the new, we talked about the new normal. That might be the new normal for a while. So not pace of play, it's pace and space. So that's great. Part of Pellucid's publication also was there was an article in there from Harvey Silverman, good friend of NGCOA's. He takes a bit of a cynical approach to what's been happening out there. I think he called it a theater of absurd that he's seeing out there in the golf industry with some of this. And in particular, he's pretty critical, or at least dubious, about the ability of golf courses to truly sanitize golf cars and to truly, are you really able to, when two people come up to the course and say, hey, we rode in the car together here, so we should be able to ride in a golf car together. Who's out in the parking lot policing that to make sure that happens? And so, he's taking, he's concerned. What he's coming from a real health concerns, standpoint, but he's a little cynical about, can course operators really do this? And I'll tell you from my experience, a couple of weeks ago, I had to go to the hospital to meet with my orthopedist about something about my knee, and this is a hospital. After all this is started going down, and when I got to the door, there was a table set up with nurses and security with masks on and all this, and so they're asking me questions about my symptoms. Have I been around anybody with symptoms? All this kind of stuff, and I said no, and they verified I had an appointment with Dr. Carroll. Yep, and they let me go right by. Okay, first of all, one, I could have been lying about, nope, haven't been around anybody with symptoms, nope, and so nobody's there. No, there's nobody to check on that. And this is a hospital, right? I go past them to go up to the second floor to go to my appointment. I'm touching handles, I'm pushing buttons on the elevator, I'm doing all these things. And, so someone like Harvey or someone else could take a very cynical approach saying, look, why, should the hospitals be doing everything possible to, police and insure? And this is where I said last week, we're at the intersection of business responsibility and personal responsibility, right? And so it's like, at the end of the day, it comes down to personal responsibility. If you walk into a situation, if I walked up that hospital, Don, and I said, man, I'm afraid of picking up the virus here, and I don't think that they're doing a good job, I walk away, right? And so this is new territory for everybody, but yeah, he was pretty cynical about, showing, hey, are you wiping down every single surface on that golf car that anybody could touch? And maybe, talk to that. Like how are you and how are other golf course operators literally sanitizing a golf car where someone can touch, I don't know how many square feet there are of surface on the golf car, but, what is an operator to do to guarantee safety or is there no guarantee?
Well, there's no guarantee, right? I mean, you could walk into a hospital room and not have a guarantee that there could be germ. People have surgeries all the time and get in bacterial infections. Where do those come from, right? So there's always going to be issues like that. Harvey, I did like the meal that night. He kind of threw a little jab at the meal that night. And I'm like, Harvey, come on, man. But anyway, he did, right? So, but Harvey, this is what I tell you. Let's be honest. I think you can make some money in golf, but nobody's in golf for the money. I'm not open right now because I'm making a bunch of money. I'm not open. I never got in the golf industry for that. If I would have got into pharmaceuticals or something that's all about the money, I'd be selling real estate. I love golf. I love the people who play it. I love when I expose people to the game of golf because I know it changes their life. I know they're going to play with their grandmas and grandpas, and they're going to play with their grandkids when they get older. That's why we're doing it, Harvey. It's not to jeopardize anybody's health. We're doing everything we possibly can to wash down that cart, sanitize every spot. Every day we do a little bit more because we're like, oh, what about this spot? We didn't think about that. So Harvey's right. Hey, he wrote an article, and I love Harvey. If he was sitting in front of me right now, I'd love to go back and forth with him a little bit of just saying that we're doing everything we possibly can, just like that hospital did when you walked in the door, just like I do at my house when I get undressed in the garage before I walk in and have a shower before I see my family. It's not that I'm scared of getting them sick. It's just I'm going to take the precautions that I think are necessary to make sure that we're all doing what we're supposed to be doing of self-policing ourselves. But as a business owner, Jay, there is a little bit on us. It's like over-serving somebody in the restaurant. I have to make sure that I don't overserve them. It should be up to them if they're drinking too much, but it's not. It's up to me. And so when it comes to that, I posted a sign that says you can't ride in a cart with somebody else unless you live with them. Now, if they lie to me or they read that and then they don't follow that, well, then I did what I could possibly do. I can't stop liars out there. They're going to beat me every time. It's locks are for honest people.
Yeah.
So that's all I say is that to put up good signage, make sure you've got good talking points to everybody on your staff of the chemicals you're using, the steps that you're taking, so that there is no way that everybody's doing what they're supposed to be doing. But at the end of the day, there's no such thing as a perfectly safe experience, even going home. So in your heart, do it for the right reasons. Have your why based on that. And Harvey, I'm with you, man. I know you're in that category, but so are a lot of people who are playing Augusta Ranch right now.
Yeah. So I want to touch on John Last from Sports and Leisure Research Group and what he came out with this week before closing out with some of the other questions in the Q&A. We'll get to as many as we can before the 3:45 mark. But, he came out with some research. They had interviewed 513 people and asked questions about their sentiments to get back into sports, to get back into watching sports and all of these things. And, an executive summary of this is basically what he's saying is that when compared to 9/11 and the Great Recession of 08-09, that consumers are expressing that they're less likely to kind of jump back into the economy and go travel and do all these things than like after 9/11. I mean, that makes a lot of sense, and that's not a surprise because 9/11, any hesitation to dive back in was just economic. Like, did my 401k get cut in half because of the stock market crash? Or do I not have the money to do that? That certainly would cause hesitation to jump back into spending and traveling. Right now, there's a health fear that is attached to the economic fear that, my gosh, I don't know if I want to get back on a plane for a while. I don't know if I want to sit next to a spectator for a while. So that's a very different animal now than it was for the recession or 9/11. And what he's saying is that in ranking in order of what would convince someone to jump back in, number one is that there's actually a vaccine now in the market. Once there's a vaccine, then more people say, I'm back in. Next under vaccine is if the health authorities say, okay, everybody, it's relatively safe. It's safe now to get back out there. And then third behind that would be the government officials, obviously. So we're talking vaccine, then the health authorities, and government officials as far as ranking order. What signal do you need to jump back into the economy? But I'll say this, Don, is that, what I've learned since the 2016 election is you got to be careful when measuring sentiment. What I'd be curious to see is, what was the sentiment before 9/11 to jump back in, or when 9/11 hit? What was the sentiment to jump back into the economy, and what did they actually do? And what, when we're saying this is the sentiment of people wanting to get back out and play golf, that's okay. That's interesting. But, 2 years from now, when we look back, what did they actually do? Because look at the 2016 election. Every single poll was saying that the result was going to be this way, and look at what it actually turned out. So my faith in sentiment studies has dwindled a bit, but what do you take from John's analysis from the sentiment to jump back in after the pandemic has died down?
Yeah, I mean, I would never question John and his research, man. The guy's a stud, right? I mean, he's actually doing a big, presentation on Monday for the Golf Inc. Innovation Day, that Jack Critton had put together. And I think that's going to be fascinating to listen to. But certainly getting the PowerPoint and reading it, you're right. It's interesting when you even talk about latent demand, right? I mean, the Boston Consulting Group told the PGA of America that we had a huge latent demand out there, but we haven't quite seemed to access it for a variety of reasons. Hopefully Project Golf is something that will help that. But I do know it also comes to welcoming and inviting. I think golf's always been welcoming to a whole bunch of people, but I don't know if we've invited a lot of people into it. So the sentiment side of what you're saying is I think it's always going to be difficult. You can be open to doing many things. I'm open to being on the mountain biking, but I've never called Kurt Albertson to say, hey, take me out, because I know he's going to beat me up on these big mountains and I don't want to do it. But if there was a little trail that I could take, a bunny slope, then I might get into it. But guess what? I'm probably never going to take that first step unless Kurt calls me up or somebody gets me involved. So at the end of the day, sentiment can only be leveraged by the invitation from somebody who enjoys it already, in my opinion. No commercial is going to do that. It's always going to be word of mouth. It's always going to be somebody pushing their passion onto you and getting you the hook in your mouth that you go, wow, this could be a great thing for me and my family to do. I cannot think of a better opportunity for golf for us to leverage this. And it's probably a poor choice of words, Jay, because we're in a terrible situation. Still, half the courses are closed in America, but golf has the answers. And I'm not just saying that because I've been drinking the golf Kool-Aid my whole life. It's because I truly believe this crosses generations. It's the 10,000 steps. It's the 2,000 calories. It's outdoor. And with pace and space, we've ensured a very healthy opportunity to enjoy life with your family post-coronavirus.
Oh, that's good. There are a couple of questions related to the driving range I want to get to. So we'll close out, our time together by trying to knock out some of these questions. So one question is, for the courses still able to be open, are you seeing a trend toward limiting and or keeping the practice tee closed to better encourage and enforce social distancing? And then also based on changes at the driving range, are you raising rates of the driving, access to the driving range? An interesting question. So have you seen a trend of closing down the driving range because that's the place where people may be violating the social distance? Are you having to break out the stick more on the driving range and other places? And are people shutting it down as a precautionary measure? Have you seen any of your your fellow operators doing that?
Yeah, I haven't seen fellow operators. I do think, if you've got 30 stations now, why don't you lower it to 20? But you're right. There are people hovering out there. What's interesting about Wisconsin is they said, the driving ranges were closed, but if you live with a group, then you can violate the social distancing. So that's an interesting question because we've talked before about the social media shaming that can happen with the perception of groups of people not understanding that they actually live together in an extended family. So those are difficult questions. Seriously, this stick is funny, but I gave it to the starter, I gave it to the restaurant, and they just walk around with it. And people see it, and now it's become this little joke. Oh, here comes Don with the stick. Here comes Bill with the stick. But it's making a point to say, we just want you to separate. Whether you live together or not, we want to try to keep the golf course open. We want Governor Ducey to know that we're taking it seriously, this privilege he's given us. So I would cut down the amount of stations for sure, and I would monitor it because it is a place for people to kind of congregate and just walk around with your 6-foot PVC stick. I think it works. I'm telling you, it works. And this was in the scrap pile back in the maintenance yard. It cost me nothing and some black tape. I would do it.
So
I really
what
would.
About the pricing question? There's obviously dynamic pricing, so there's demand-based pricing all the time on tee times. There has been since the beginning of time. We've always charged more on a weekend than a weekday because demand is higher. Now we're getting more granular with that. Have you seen people or course operators take the dynamic pricing and move it to the range that in the higher seasons, a bucket of balls may be more than in the lower season? I would imagine some courses do that, but what have you observed, and have you seen any trends in that right now?
Yeah, right. There's some early adopters out there, some innovators. I mean, I wonder when PGA professionals will get into charging their lessons in revenue management scale of saying that we know a Tuesday is not as busy as a Saturday, so why aren't my rent schedules lower on that? But whether it's carts or driving range, I think that is kind of the future a little bit, but let's not overdo too many things. I mean, because customers are sensitive to when they think you're about the money and not them. So not raised the rates here on the driving range here at Augusta Ranch. Actually, our rate revenue is down. Everything's down. Everybody's walking. You know, it's funny. All these people are home, Jay, so they think our golf course is full because they're usually not driving by my parking lot at 11. It's always been full. I'm actually less full now than ever before, but so many people aren't working. They think I'm crazy busy. No, I'm not. All the time they come in, Don, looks like you're killing it. I'm not killing it. I got killed in March. I'm barely hanging on in April. So the perception is not good for us right now. Everybody thinks that we're very opportunistic on being the only game in town. We have to get out there in front of the public and at any possible moment, maybe not on social media because we're trying to lay low on that, which I think is smart. But we have to put out there, no, we're not killing it. We're providing a service for people who are getting pent up and they want to spend time with their families. So no, I think you could do that for driving range. I mean, certainly Topgolf does, right? Topgolf charges more. They're $20, $30, or $40 at a typical location based on the time of day. So they're just a range. They're not a golf course. So I think that is certainly the future. I think it could be for your range too. Just make sure you're doing it for the right reasons. You're not taking advantage of people that are finally coming out for the first time. That's not really what we want to teach them the first time we meet them.
Yeah, you're right. There's a question about your F&B operation at Augusta Ranch. Do you have a bartender making drinks for the golfers to take out on the course? And is your grill open for outside golfers?
Yeah. We're takeout no matter who you are, whether you're a golfer or not a golfer. We are making drinks. We have what they call in Arizona a Series 12 license. So drinks have to be consumed right there on the property. Governor Ducey actually said it was okay to do a takeout drink, even though typically you wouldn't with the Series 12. But there is a bartender making drinks. Revenue down is down over there by half. I did the numbers last year, April month to date. I was at $35,000 in 2019. This year I'm at $15,000. We've cut about everything we can cut except for days of the week, which is going to happen next, and doing everything we can to provide the experience for the community and for the course. But at the end of the day, it's dramatically impacted right now. That is getting cannibalistic. The takeout order environment with these big companies are being very aggressive with DoorDash and Uber Eats and those things like that. I can't compete with that. So I don't see how long, I don't know how long my restaurant's going to take it. And hey, if you work at Augusta Ranch and you're watching this, I've been honest with you already. We're just trying to do the best we can. But yeah, I guess to answer the question specifically, bartender is making some drinks, putting it to go cup. But typically that isn't something you're even allowed to do with the Series 12 license. But beers, I have a Series 7, they call it in Arizona. Maybe you have that in your state where I actually can sell a 6-pack of beer or a 12-pack of beer to somebody and anybody. That's how I do in the beverage cart. But yeah, gloves, sneeze guards. I went to Lowe's, about a sneeze guard. So we're doing everything we can. We've got cones on the floor, tape on the floor, just like they have at Lowe's and Home Depot to make sure people are social distancing when they're in line.
Good. I'm going to address 2 more questions, and anything I don't address, again, we'll try to get to offline and look for answers to those questions on the FAQ page at the NGCOA website. So one is, how is the unemployment compensation going to work? My understanding is an employee will receive $600 in addition to their particular state's unemployment wage. Does this pertain to part-timers? How about the bagroom guy that works 1 day a week and makes $50 per day? Will he receive his unemployment plus $600 per week? So from what I've seen is one, part-timers can qualify if they qualify for at least $1 of unemployment at your state. Every state is different on how they calculate unemployment compensation and qualifications for that. So you have to look at your state level requirements. And if they qualify for $1 or more per week, then they get the full $600. The federal government is not prorating the $600 based on hours worked and all that kind of stuff. So if that bag person's, working 1 day a week making $50, I don't know I don't know if they qualify for $1 of unemployment compensation in that state. But that points to because now they make $600 a week if they do, right? And so that points to what Senator Lindsey Graham said when all this was getting crafted, was like, he was, saying, oh, all these Americans are going to take advantage of this. Those that are making less than the $600 a week may qualify for a little unemployment and get the $600 a week. And so he was not happy with that. But certainly I think that there's, that economically, I think the point of this was, one, to keep it simple, and 2, that if someone's making a few extra bucks per week because of this, then, in this hard time with everything going on, that's probably not the worst thing in the world. But anyway, to answer that question, if they qualify for state unemployment, then they do qualify for that federal. But make sure you read all the regulations in your state unemployment office first. Last question is thoughts on golf tournaments and golf leagues. What do you think? You're the operator. certainly I know, I mean, how does operating a golf tournament or a league, play with regard to the backdrop of the pandemic and social distancing and all that? Can you actually orchestrate a socially distant golf league event or something like that? And does a golf league event violate the, some governor's orders say, hey, 10 or more cannot congregate, or in South Carolina, I think it was like 3 or more people cannot congregate together. So can you thread that needle, or just say, sorry, no leagues and no tournaments are gonna be happening while this is going on? What do you do?
Well, I don't know shotguns. I wouldn't do double tees either, because that's going to have some people congregating maybe a little bit more than just a straight first tee start. So shotguns should be over. Don't do that at all. Don't do any scoring. I wouldn't do proximity markers, because everybody's grabbing that pencil and writing their name on it. So proxies are out. Shotguns are out. Tee times are tee times are tee times. If you're 7 minutes and you want to go to 10, hey, knock yourself out. Some are going to 15. Hey, whatever you want to do. But at the end of the day, it's still 4 people getting into the park every 8 or 9 minutes. So to me, that is completely okay with social distancing. So I don't think you have to get away from golf leagues. Now, if you're the one organizing them, just be careful. Like I said, you shouldn't have one person taking all the money. I wouldn't do that. We don't do cash here. Zero. We haven't done cash. And guess what? I don't think we've lost any business. A couple of people walked away because they wanted a soda for $2. I'm sorry. I'm going to have to hit your credit card.
Let me
run your
debt
debt
with you real quick, Don.
Yeah,
I want to make sure, because when you say we let 4 people on every 9 minutes, but if you're running a shotgun and you got 100 people coming, can you what is the advice? What if they're all showing up at the same time? How do you manage the flow and social distancing if you've got an event with, that many people showing up at the same time?
Simple communication to the league coordinator, and just telling the league coordinator, hey, in the past, I know everybody used to come in early, but that's not the way it works anymore. Your tee time's for a reason. Once again, no shotguns. I would not do a shotgun. I don't see how you could effectively manage even the perception of a shotgun. It's not about if you do it perfectly. Even right now, people see my parking lot full and they think I'm violating social distancing. I mean, right? The perception is what we have to be careful about. So no, it's always tee times. Communicate with the league coordinators. Make sure everybody understands to show up 15 minutes before their tee time. And we're going to stage you. My first tee guy's got the stick. He's walking around in a fun way, poking people in the belly, backing them up. And then that's what we're doing. And it's working. But I wouldn't do scoring unless it's completely online. I wouldn't do proximity markers. They're out there to have fun, hopefully walk, so I can, save the carts because I'm running out every day. But that's what I would recommend.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that. So there's one last comment here from Kurt Albertson, as we all know. He says, deal, Don, have the extra bike for you as well. So whenever you're ready to jump on that bike and go mountain biking. So, all right, we borrowed more time than we should have with the extra 5 minutes, guys. We got to end this, but thank you for tuning in for this Golf Business Live Friday edition. And we'll be here next Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern as well. And hopefully, maybe we'll start inviting some guests. You'll see a third face pop up on your screen once in a while for some in-depth discussion. But again, everybody have a wonderful weekend, and see you next week, same time, same channel.